Yeah.
Okay, we are live, Russ. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for another fireside chat brought to you by the Chimney Safety Institute of America. My name is Tommy Gnomes. I'm the current president. And tonight we've got a returning guest, Russ Dimmitt, who is the director of education for the CSI. Extremely knowledgeable guy. Wrote our training manual for our new technicians who are coming through our world-class training facility that we have right outside of Plainfield, Indiana. And so tonight, Russ, we wanted to talk about a subject that most people probably are not thinking about, but it's something that you really need to be thinking about right now, and that is seasoning firewood. Russ, you've been in this business for a long, long time. I've been in it for over 10 years. I can tell you this: nobody I know thinks that they burn green wood, but most of them do. And it's something that, as a homeowner, some people cut their own firewood, some people buy it from somewhere else, but everybody says that they're using seasoned wood. And a lot of people are not. Have you found that to be the case, Russ?
Absolutely. That's probably the number one problem that folks experience with their wood burning appliances is burning wet wood. In fact,
Yeah.
that's a joke we have in class all the time, or somebody calls it the technical problem, is everybody in America burns dry wood. We know that.
Right.
There's actually been cases where I've had somebody say they're having a problem with their wood stove, and I said, well, let me see your wood pile, and there's mushrooms growing out of it. And they say that's dry wood. So that's probably the number one problem that we'll have with burning is burning wet wood.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll get into it a little bit of kind of what that means for the homeowner of burning that green or really wet wood, and some of the problems that can come along with that. And we want to take this time tonight to hopefully teach you the homeowner. Number one, if you're going to cut your own firewood, here's some best practices, right? As far as what type of wood to use, how you need to cut it, how you need to stack it and store it, so that it's ready to go when you need it. And if you're buying it from somebody, what to look for. How are there things that you can do as a homeowner if you're purchasing firewood to ensure that you do have seasoned wood, and then it's not too wet. And so we want to play a little video for you, and I want to bring tee this up. So our vice president of the Chimney Safety Institute of America, his name is John Caesar. He is a TikTok superstar. He does some really, really good videos with TikTok. And one of he does parody videos and stuff like that he uses a lot of comedy to kind of segue into education. And he's got a video that he did on seasoned wood, and we want to play that for you, and then we'll kind of jump into this topic. Russ, does that sound good?
Sounds good. This is a great video.
So,
hi, I'm John Caesar with Caesar Chimney Service, and today we're going to talk about firewood. The first and most important thing about firewood is it has to be seasoned at least a year in advance. Some people like basil, other people like garlic salt. I myself, I'm an oregano guy. But no matter what you use, make sure your wood is seasoned.
So we had a good laugh at that, and we tried to get John on tonight, but John had to take care of his little girl, so he couldn't be with us tonight. So we're missing John, but he allowed us to use that video, and so we laugh about that. But because when you think about seasoning things, you don't really know. A lot of times, what does that really mean, right? So Russ, talk to the people who are watching or who will be watching. Tell them, what is seasoned wood? What does that even mean?
Yeah, when we talk about seasoned wood, basically we're talking about wood that's sufficiently dry. What happens is if you burn wet wood, a piece of wood has a set number of BTUs in it. When you burn wet wood, a lot of the BTUs in that wood are used to dry the wood and don't actually benefit you as useful heat in your home. So that's the big problem. Burning wet wood causes a lot of issues. We shoot for around 15 to 25% moisture content. Now, that's easy to determine. Any of the big box lumber yards or any place that you can purchase wood, you can get a moisture meter. It's easy to test your wood. Until wood split, it's not going to dry and be seasoned. So there's a whole lot of techniques we'll talk about more. But basically, when we talk about seasoned wood, we talk about wood that's been dried down in that 15 to 25% moisture range.
That's right. Yeah. And so it's important for the homeowner to understand when we say that, when we say seasoned wood or dried wood, we want that wood to be dry. Obviously, a tree's living. It's got roots. It's pulling all of that moisture through to get out to the branches and to the leaves, and it's sap and all of the other things that are inside of a living tree. And when you go to burn that, that moisture actually cools the fire down, and what it does is it creates a tremendous amount of smoke because it's smothering that fire down. So imagine if you have a fire going and you threw a cup of water on there, it's going to it'll turn to steam but it'll smolder. It'll smoke really bad for a while. And what that does is that is creating creosote, which is the black stuff in your chimney that we as CSI certified chimney sweeps, we're trying to remove that because it's a flammable material. We do not want that to happen. Now, when you burn wood, it's going to happen. But there are ways that you can use your fireplace to make it much more efficient. And this is one of the ways that you can do that. I know for us on all of our trucks, we have moisture meters. We just bought them on Amazon. They're cheap. They have, I wish I had it with me, but it has two little prongs and you can stick it on a piece of wood and it'll tell you what the moisture content of that wood is. And Russ hit the nail on the head when he said, ideally, we want 15 to 25% moisture content in that wood. That is kind of the ideal burning scenario for firewood. And so, Russ, when let's say the customer is not going to cut their own firewood, they're buyers, right? They're going to buy firewood, and everybody that sells firewood says it's seasoned. But what can a homeowner, what can they look for when they buy firewood?
Well, one of the first things to do is use that moisture meter you were just talking about to test it. And don't test it as it is. You need to split a piece and test it in the middle. That will give you an accurate moisture content. As Tommy spoke about, trees have water. They're bringing that water up all the time to nourish the tree, have the leaves green, things like that. And even after a tree dies, that moisture does not get out until it's been cut up and split. I've actually had a personal experience on an oak tree that had been down for 10 years. I finally got around to cutting wood. Cut that. It was running about 40 to 50% moisture content after that tree had been down for 10 years.
Wow.
And it wasn't on the ground. It was up in the air. So it's got to be cut and split to really to dry. So if you're going to buy wood, make sure you split a piece and use your moisture meter. Some other visual signs you might see is the ends will have cracks or checks in it. That's a sign that wood is starting to dry. If you take two pieces and bang them together, it will get you'll get a sound similar to bowling pins. If you get two pieces together and it kind of thunks, that's a sign of wet wood. So if you hit two pieces together and you get a sharp sound like a bowling pin, that's one indication that wood is well on the way to being ready to burn. And you look for those checks, splits in the end. Sometimes as the wood dries, the bark starts coming off. So that's another sign you can look for that wood is sufficiently dry. One important thing to do, depending on where you're at in the country, they may sell wood by the pickup load, by the truckload, whatever the case may be. The correct way to measure wood is by a method of square footage. A cord of wood is the commonly used measurement for wood. That is 8 feet by 8 feet by 12 feet long. So that's about 128 cubic feet of wood. That's a fair pile. That's a pretty big pile. Just out of curiosity, I figured out this afternoon while I was preparing for this, my woodshed holds 6 cords. So I've got a pretty good sized woodshed. So you want to look and make sure you're getting what you're paying for. Wood thrown loosely in a pickup is going to have a lot less wood in your pile than somebody that stacked it neatly. So check your moisture content, check the volume of wood you receive. A lot of times what's sold as a cord is not a cord. There's other areas of the country where they'll use kind of a regional measurement, like a rick
Yep.
or a face cord. And those are about a third of a cord, actually.
Okay.
So if you're buying it by the cord, make sure you get a cord.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a really good point. So Russ, and let's talk about this too, because a lot of people, I've seen it a lot where, the fireplace or the firewood companies or they'll say, well, it's all hardwoods, it's all oak and hickory and things like that. So there's a big debate, right? So hardwood versus softwoods. What does that mean? What are those? Explain this to the homeowner. What's the difference between hardwoods and softwoods? Is one better than the other? What's your recommendation, Russ?
Well, in some areas of the country, you'll hear, oh, never burn pine or softwoods. That's really not true, because there's large areas of the country where they heat a lot. There's a lot of homes that heat with wood. They have nothing but softwoods. When we talk about softwoods, we're primarily talking about pines or things like needles. With needles. When we talk about hardwoods, we're talking more the oaks, the hickories, that kind of thing. The big difference between the two is the number of BTUs in a given volume. Interestingly enough, wood has the same number of BTUs per pound, whether it's softwood or hardwood.
So, and Russ, not to interrupt you, but so explain that to the homeowner.
Absolutely.
Explain what a BTU is. Walk them through that.
Yeah, BTU is a British thermal unit, and it's the amount of heat it takes to heat 1 square inch of water by 1 degree. When you buy a furnace or water heater, they talk about BTUs on how much power that thing has, for lack of a better term. So what happens is softwood is lighter in weight than hardwood. So to get the same volume and the same poundage, you have to have a lot bigger pile of softwood than you do hardwood. So basically, you might have to have a third or more. Your wood pile might have to be a third bigger with softwood than it would be with hardwood to get the same number of BTUs. So you might think, well, gee, I don't want to burn anything but hardwood. That may be the case. It may not. Something to keep in mind is softwood will dry much quicker. So if you get yourself in a bind and say, oh, I don't have my wood laid away for the winter, been there, done that. Sitting in that same position right now. I got less than a cord ready for next year. So to dry wood, season it properly if you don't have any oregano around. It takes 6 months to a year, depending on your climate, how much moisture you have, and things like that. So softwood will dry quicker, so that might be an advantage. The other thing to keep in mind is hardwood provides a lot more BTUs or heating capacity for a given volume. So if you have a time of year, which we often do, depending on where you live, how long that period lasts, but in the spring and the fall, you may need a little heat, but not much. What happens is if you put hardwood in your stove, you get a fire going, immediately your room gets too hot. So you open a window, you choke down the stove, don't allow enough air for combustion, which makes a smoky fire and increases your creosote into your flue and your chimney. So that's the ideal time of year to burn the softwood. You get a lot of heat, but you get it quickly. The fire doesn't last a long time, and you don't overheat your room. So really, it's ideal to have both available to you, hardwood and softwood.
Nice. Okay, man, that's a really good point. So Russ, are you saying, so if I burned one log equal size of oak versus pine, that the oak log will burn a little bit hotter?
It'll burn hotter and it'll burn longer.
Okay.
Because there's more fuel in that hardwood than there is in the softwood. And when Tommy was talking about creosote and the smoke, ideally your appliance, if it's burning properly, you should go outside and see no evidence that your appliance is burning. There should be no smoke coming out of your chimney. Now that sometimes can be difficult to determine, and get that smokeless fire. I know that's one of the things on my wood stove. What I do is I'll step out on the deck and look up in the wintertime. And if I don't see any smoke coming out of the chimney, I know I'm doing it right. A side note is that you should have a stovepipe thermometer on a wood stove to determine how hot you're burning your fire. There was a manufacturer of thermometers for wood stoves a few years back that had a hat and t-shirts that said, burning your stove without a thermometer is like driving a car without a speedometer. And that's very accurate. You don't know what how your appliance is performing. There's a range on those thermometers where you want to keep your fire all the time, your flue gas temperature. So that's very important to proper usage of your stove and things like that.
Yeah, those are all really good points because it really comes down to the whole idea of educating people is number one, teaching them proper burning techniques to especially if you're burning wood, you're always going to have some sort of creosote buildup, but try to minimize that. But number two, getting your fireplace, your wood stove, whatever it is that you have or you're using, to a point where you enjoy it. And, I know a lot of folks that we deal with on a regular basis, get really frustrated. Like, man, this thing doesn't work right. Or, I just have such a hard time with it. And it could be one of the fixes. There's so many different things that go into it. But one of the fixes could really be, making sure that the fuel that you're putting into the wood that you're putting into your fireplace, your wood stove, is what it should be, right? Because what it's designed to be burning. And so, Russ, this brings us into a really good segue here. So tell me, Russ, you educate a lot of people, a lot of men and women all over the country, industry professionals and homeowners. But tell us again, why is wet wood bad to use in a fireplace, wood stove, whatever? Why is it so bad?
Well, one thing that happens is wet wood is much harder to light on fire. It doesn't want to burn. It's wet. The first step of the combustion process is to drive off the moisture. Until that moisture is gone, your wood can't burn. So it's hard to light. It's hard to use. Wet wood, because of the water you're driving off, your smoke is cooler. You've heard Tommy and I both mention the word creosote. What creosote actually is this deposits in your flue. It's unburned fuel. It's unburned fuel. There's a certain temperature range you have to have your stove operating at. To get good combustion on wood, you got to be about 1100 degrees, believe it or not. If your fire is cooler than that, you have a lot of that unburned fuel going up your chimney. When that cools in your chimney, it deposits and you get this creosote. And you can have the chimney fire or things like that, which we all want to avoid.
Yeah.
I don't have the video queued up, but we've got some videos of some chimney fires we do at the school there, or the academy. And there'd be flames shooting 2, 3, 4 feet out of the top of the chimney. It's scary. Yeah, if that happens, may sound like you have a freight train going through the living room. That's the sound of the air rushing in. Obviously, is going to damage your chimney. And could possibly, in the worst case scenario, you could have combustion in your dwelling, and you do not want that to happen.
Right.
So, the cooler flue gases make more creosote. It's hard to start. And as big as anything, especially if you're cutting your own wood, is you got to burn a lot more wood to get the same heat value, because all that fuel content of the wood is being used to dry the wood. So the drier your wood, the less wood you need to burn to get a given amount of heat.
Right. Yeah. We actually had a customer, Russ, a couple of years ago that we had installed a wood stove for him. It was a wood stove insert, so it slid into a masonry brick fireplace, and put the wood stove in, dropped a liner down, insulated stainless steel liner. And he called about a week later, and he said, I've had a flue fire. And I'm thinking, there's no way already he's had, a flue fire. So I'm like, man, something's going on. So I go out there and, do a full inspection of the system and run a camera. And you could tell this guy had a flue fire in that wood stove. And I'm just like, I can't believe it. And I immediately think, well, how was there so much? And there was just there was a ton of creosote that was unburned, that was still in there from the flue fire. The cap was warped because it had gotten so hot. And I'm like, what in the world? And I immediately start thinking, how did we develop this much creosote? How did this customer do this in such a short period of time? And so I start talking through him with it, and we're talking about it. And I said, walk me through how you're using this wood stove. Tell me how you're doing it. Hey, we're using it as a primary source of heat. That way our HVAC doesn't have to run so much. And, we're loving it. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about your firewood. What kind of firewood are you using? Well, I cut the firewood, a couple of months ago, and it's stacked up outside. And I looked out his back door, and right there was still a chainsaw sitting on the ground, and there was a railroad tie that he had cut up, and he was using because that railroad tie would catch really easy. It would burn really hot. And so he was using the railroad tie to, number one, help start the fire, and number two, to generate a tremendous amount of heat really quickly. Well, the problem with that is that those railroad ties are treated, and it just filled the liner up. And we explained that to them. And what you as the homeowner, what people need to understand is that you want to be make sure that whoever the manufacturer is, whether it's a site built true masonry brick chimney that someone has built, or if it's a metal firebox, which we in our industry, those are called factory built fireplaces, or whether it's a wood stove. Concerning factory built and wood stoves and things like that, the manufacturer is going to tell you, they're most all, Russ, correct me if I'm wrong, are going to tell you to burn seasoned firewood with a moisture content of 15 to 25%.
Every time.
And what the homeowner needs to understand is that, those systems, especially if they're new, they're going to come with certain warranties. And if you're not following within the parameters of what they suggest, they may not warranty that product for you. And so it's important to make sure that you're familiar with your system. If you're unsure, contact your local CSI certified chimney sweep. They can help you identify whatever system you have, whoever the manufacturer is, and they can, hopefully get you the information that you need. Russ, we got a message here from Adam Chapman. He said, "Hey there, guys. Adam, thank you for watching. Appreciate everybody tuning in. And hopefully this is educational. I know that we have a lot of industry professionals that watch this as well, Russ. And so, there's a lot of over 2,000 men and women across the United States of America that are CSI certified chimney sweeps or specialists or master sweeps, highly educated, highly motivated people that really have dug in and spent a lot of time to learn about things like this, to educate the customer. So those are the reasons why it's important not to use that wet wood. And, if I could tell you anything, it's number one, get a moisture meter. They're like 10 to 20 bucks on Amazon. I think they sell them at Walmart, Home Depot, any local store. Have one of those. Make sure that you know what you're working with. And Russ, another question I have for you, because you're actually the one that educated me on this, because a lot of people will cut their firewood, split it, and then they'll stack it real tight and they'll throw a tarp over it to keep it dry. So there's actually a proper way to stack and store your firewood. So Russ, what do you have to say about that? What are your thoughts on that? How should people do it?
Well, ideally, once you split your wood, you want to stack it fairly loosely so the air can flow through it. That's very important. It should be covered so rain can't get on it. Ideally, if you could babysit your wood pile, you'd have it sitting in the sun all day where the wind could hit it. And then when their storm comes up, you could go out and cover it. That's not practical. So you want to build a woodshed with a roof and open sides so the air can flow through. And you don't want to stack it really, really tight, because if you do that, it prevents airflow. Airflow is really what dries the wood. So ideally, undercover, open sides so the air can flow through it. That's very important. You can cut and split wood all day, but if you lay it out so the rain can get to it, it's not going to dry as well as it should. The other thing is you want it up off the ground. If you stack wood on the ground, that bottom layer is never going to dry, could rot over time, attract insects and various vermin or varmints. So you want to keep it up off the ground so that air can flow underneath. It doesn't get moisture from the ground, covered, and so air can flow is really the key. One thing that's out there is the EPA has a website called EPA Burnwise, and they've got plans on there for building wood sheds and a lot of good information on wood storage and seasoning. So that's somewhere you might want to touch on. And we've got some information on the CSI.org website too.
Absolutely.
With this very thing.
Yeah, we also have some really good videos on the CSI's YouTube channel. I would encourage everybody to go to that YouTube channel because we've got some videos on there specifically addressing this. I know one of the videos they have is what does seasoned firewood sound like? Yep. And all sorts of things to know about firewood, because right now, I know, like for me in Tennessee, it was like 90 degrees today. It is so hot. The last thing on anybody's mind right now is firewood, but this is the time to get it going, right? Because you can cut it, split it, stack it, and have it ready to go when it does get cold enough where you're ready to burn a fire. And Russ, here's a question. Somebody asked me this today when I was talking to him. I said, somebody asked me, said, what are y'all going to talk about tonight? I said, we're going to talk about seasoned firewood. And they said, which I thought was a really good question. Mm-hmm. They said, so if you season firewood, can it ever become unseasoned?
It absolutely can if you don't cover it and let the rain and snow get on it. You can go backwards in that process. So that's why it's important that you have your wood pile covered, is it will absorb moisture again. Maybe not to the degree it was wet at one time, but it will absorb moisture again.
Yeah, I thought that was a really good question, because I stopped and thought about it for a second. I said, of course, absolutely. Because if you split it, stack it, and then it dries, and then you don't cover it, well, it's going to rain, and that wood is going to absorb that moisture again, and you're going to be right back in the same boat, and then it has to dry out again. That's why storing it is so important, and make sure it's covered, because you want to keep the rain off of it. What you don't want to do is encapsulate it in some sort of tent where it's where that moisture can escape, and it creates a very humid environment. So that was I thought that was a really poignant question. And Adam Chapman, he says, no problem, tuning in from South Shore, Massachusetts. So it gets cold up there in Massachusetts, so they know all about firewood up there. In the video that we showed you earlier by John Caesar, John's up in New Hampshire, and I know it gets cold there. And Russ, you're in Iowa, and it gets cold there too.
Yeah, that's one of the standard jokes is I'll send Tommy pictures of snow and the thermometer, and he's always like, I don't know how you live there.
Well, it's wild, and regionally, and I think that's the thing to understand, where when you have, like you in Iowa, Russ, or Adam in Massachusetts, you may have to start your prepping your firewood for the next season earlier.
A year or so ahead, yeah.
Than other places, because it's very, very climate driven. It just really depends on where you are. And it's important for people to understand that, if you're going to want to enjoy your fireplace, your wood stove, whatever it is that you have, you need to make sure that you're feeding it, and that the fuel, which is the wood that you're burning, is the right stuff. And it starts here, right? It starts with education, because Russ touched on it earlier. He talked a lot about, creosote, which is the black stuff that when we show up as CSI certified chimney sweeps, we're brushing that, and we're trying to remove that, and so you can help us by burning that wood, and you're going to have a much more enjoyable experience, because burning that wet wood can lead to a lot of different problems. You're adding fuel to a flue liner where it really shouldn't be. It's creating a flammable environment in there. It can clog up your cap. It can cause performance issues too, Russ. With wood stoves and things like that. And it can cause frustration, right? I mean, how many times, Russ, if you talk to someone or been out to their house and they're just so frustrated with the system. They were looking so excited about, they were so excited about the burning season, and then they go to use it and they have difficulties either getting it started, or it smokes a lot. Mm-hmm. And it can be a frustrating situation for them. And Adam Chapman has got a good point here. He said, touch on the effects of moisture on pellets as well. Proper moisture in those pellets is essential for proper burning and function in those pellets as well. And Russ, I think you have a pellet stove, don't you?
I actually have a wood stove, but
Okay.
I do have a pellet smoker, so I'm familiar with what happens when pellets get wet. Basically, if pellets get wet, they just swell up and are destroyed. They're unusable. Pellet moisture content's important. Pellets, you're still burning wood, but it's a little bit of a manufactured product where they take sawdust and press it into a pellet shape. If you're familiar with rabbit food or something like that, that's what it looks like. They're a different appliance. They're much more complex. A lot of bells and whistles and sensors and augers and fans and things. Excuse me.
And Russ, so let's touch on that really quick because there are a lot of places across the country. I know of some other folks that live in Iowa that have pellet stoves, and some guys up in the Northeast that are in our industry that use pellet stoves, love pellet stoves. So let's talk to those folks that are using a pellet stove. I know, for me, I'm in Tennessee. We don't really run into pellet stoves a lot, but I do have a pellet smoker as well. And I can always tell when those pellets have gotten exposed to moisture because they'll swell up a little bit. Mm-hmm. So can you talk to the folks out there and give them some tips on maybe what to look for when they're buying pellets?
The moisture content of pellets should be much lower than cordwood that you would burn. It's much lower. It's well below 10% in most cases. It's very important they stay dry. And the other thing is it's very important to store pellets in a dry location. In your garage, wherever, basement, wherever the case may be. It's very important that they stay dry because, as Tommy said, they get wet, they swell up, get huge, won't go through your appliance, won't burn, causes all kinds of problems. Just to circle back to something Tommy said a while ago, most of the problems I've diagnosed with new installations of wood stoves, it comes back to wet wood. They're so excited to have that wood burning appliance, and well, they should be. There's nothing like sitting in front of a wood stove on a cold winter's evening. It just warms you clear down through. But a lot of the majority of the cases I go out on a problem is it's wet wood. Check the wood, it's too wet. I have actually brought my own wood that I know is dry, and I get the common explanation of it's never worked like that before. What did you do different?
Yeah.
It's just dry wood. That's really the key to the operation of any appliance. And especially if you're buying a newer appliance now, the EPA put in some new regulations, which are great for the industry as far as cleaner burning wood stoves. But those are appliances that have been produced in the last 2 or 3 years, or moisture content is much more critical even than the older appliances that it can cause problems in. So it's important you use dry wood, get it sufficiently seasoned. If you're buying your wood, be careful to buy dry wood, and we gave you some tips on that. Check the moisture content, look for the cracks in the end, bang a couple pieces together, see what it sounds like, and make sure you're getting the volume you're paying for.
Sure. Yeah. I tell people all the time, it's kind of like, if you're putting bad gas in a car, it's not going to run well. May it have other problems? Sure, it could. But let's start with let's put something in there that we know that it is designed to run efficiently on. And so make sure that you're putting good fuel in there. And Adam, to get back to your question, when you burn wet pellets in a pellet stove, those pellet stove vents are very, very small. Mm-hmm. Pellet stoves are designed to be very, very efficient. The ash in there or the soot is very fine. And if you expose a lot of moisture to that, it's going to clump up. It's going to restrict the opening of that flue liner or that venting system. And it is going to cause problems in your pellet stove. And so that's why we talk about it all of the time. So when we talk about seasoned wood, Russ, and we're educating people, the homeowner is the one who's going to be using the fireplace. So let's make sure we're using seasoned wood. And then routine maintenance of that system too, right? And it's not a DIY project. This is something that you want professionals to do. You want a CSIA certified chimney sweep. You can go to csia.org, find one in your area, and let them educate you and help you and let them come out there with their vast knowledge and experience and be able to inspect that system and maintain it for you, so that when you are ready to use it, that you know that it's in working condition. And so these are some really, really important things that we discussed tonight. Russ, is there anything concerning Firewood? Did we miss anything? Is there any questions you can think of?
We covered a lot of ground there, but I want to just expand a little bit. You talked about bringing a CSI certified sweep out there to do your sweep, Tommy. One of the important functions, and maybe the most important function that a CSI certified sweep does, is he's trained to do a proper inspection of your system. He follows the guidelines that the National Fire Protection Association puts out for inspecting a system. He knows what he's looking for. It's not a a do-it-yourself thing, just because, unfortunately, you haven't been trained what to look for.
Right.
Yeah, that really is an important thing. When people go through our week-long academy, we want them to leave being able to sweep a chimney and do an inspection. That is so important.
Yeah. And Russ, we got another great question for Bill. Bill, thanks for watching. Can I use limbs that I cut from my trees in my yard during the spring and summer in the winter? Great question.
It's a great question. Possibly. That's why you want to have a moisture meter. If you check the moisture on those, yeah. If it's small diameter, you might get away with that. But if it's got any size to it, even if you split it, probably not. Probably not. So you want to watch for that. You go around and see stuff laying in people's yard, and I know some folks that they kind of do that and say, hey, I'll cut that up and haul it away for you.
Sure.
But you want to make sure it's split and seasoned long enough. So typically the things you cut in the spring and summer aren't going to be dry enough to burn that winter.
Right. Yeah. And I want to be clear. I don't want to just hammer, make it sound like we're coming down hard on all the folks that sell firewood. A lot of them do a really good job. Some of them may be selling firewood that they have seasoned and stored, but it's just not dry enough yet. And so if you're watching this video as a homeowner, you may be able to educate the person that you're buying the firewood from and say, hey, go check out this YouTube video or watch this Facebook Live, this fireside chat that CSIA did, and learn a little bit about firewood. And so any time that you can use an opportunity to teach somebody something is a time that you need to take advantage of. And so we hope that that's what this is all about. And again, Russ touched on it, CSIA.org. There's so much information out there. Please, if you're watching, like, comment, share these videos, because you don't know who needs to hear it. And we want as many people to see these as we possibly can, because there's a lot of people out there that are burning firewood. Like I said, in my experience, Russ's experience, I don't know anybody that does not burn seasoned firewood, but few of those people actually do. And it's kind of a joke inside of the industry, like we talked about earlier. We want to make sure that people understand what that means. Like John Cedar said, it doesn't mean basil or oregano or paprika or whatever else you want to put on your firewood. It's drying that firewood out and storing it properly, so that it's ready to go. And Russ, I cannot thank you enough for your knowledge and your willingness to come on here and teach and educate. Man, that's just who you are and what you're about, and you reflect the CSIA so well, because that's what the CSIA is about as well. We want to educate these people. So, Russ, anything else, buddy, before we cut these folks loose?
Thanks for having me, Tommy. I always enjoy talking about this kind of stuff. It's kind of a passion I have, kind of a life's mission.
Absolutely. It's really, really important. And I tell people all of the time that, my background is in the fire service, and we are in the prevention business. I was in the fire department, and I still am now. I want to educate people, prevention through education. That's what the CSIA is all about, and that's what we want to do. And this is one of the steps where we can do that. So thank you all so much for tuning in, for watching this video. We hope you learned something. If you want more information, go to CSIA.org. Check out our website. If you want more information beyond that, do not hesitate to call the CSIA office. Our staff is first class, and we can help you. we can help you get the information you need. There's the phone number right there. So thank you all so much. I hope you learned something. I know I did. And Russ, thanks so much for coming. And we will see you guys in 2 weeks. Thanks so much. Have a good night.
See ya.